Basically, we know what to believe. Everybody has a sense of humor, or rather, sense of humor, whichever way. I know quite alright that so many people would have, been surprised and have seen or heard about what Abba Kyari said. In this article, he said, "I was framed." A DCP Abba Kyari sues federal government and denies a drug trafficking allegation. That is coming to our fable as it is, and I'm going to rush and read. Yes, Abba Kyari, the suspended Deputy Commissioner of Police, DCP Abba Kyari, says the allegation against him by the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, are trumped up. On February 14th, the NDLEA declared Kyari wanted over his involvement in a 25 kg cocaine deal. Hours later, the police announced his arrest and a subsequent transfer to the NDLEA custody. Basically, the NDLEA's revelation comes a month after the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, indicted Kyari for conspiring with Hush Puppy, a self-confessed international fraudster, in a $1.1 million scam targeting Qatari business people. Well, in this suit marked FHC slash ABJ slash CS slash 182 slash 22, Kyari accused the NDLEA of assisting drug traffickers, alleging that a corrupt NDLEA officer framed him after he went to demand a compensation for a whistleblower who provided information that led to the arrest of a suspect by the Police Intelligence Response Team, IRT. Okay, if Abba Kyari has said he went for compensation, what does that simply mean? It means that you are both in the trafficking together. What are you demanding compensation for? Or rather, with the whistleblower, then where is the whistleblower? How do we know or confined in that? And also, how do we get the truth? Yes, there are words and there are yes. If your words does not stand straight, you indict yourself the more. Like I said, concerning the case of Abba Kyari, though he was arrested February 14th on the day of Valentine by the NDLEA, which declared him wanted over his involvement in a 25 kilogram cocaine deal. Hours later, the police announced his arrest and a subsequent transfer to the NDLEA custody. The NDLEA's revelation comes months after the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, indicted Kyari for conspiring with Hush Puppy. Yes, a self-confessed and a self-acclaimed international fraudster. And that is what it is. Yes, international fraudster in a $1.1 million deal scam targeting Qatari business people. In the suit marked FHC slash ABJ slash CS slash 182 slash 22, Kyari accused the NDLEA of assisting drug traffickers, alleging that a corrupt NDLEA officer framed him after he went to demand a compensation for a whistleblower who provided information that led to the arrest of a suspect by the Police Intelligence Response Team, IRT. He also stated that the suspect has been bringing cocaine into Nigeria from Ethiopia via all of the country's airports with the knowledge of the NDLEA officer, because I don't know how many now, with the help of NDLEA officers. That means Kyari also is a culprit. And then who are those that are the NDLEA officers who are targeted? Kyari in an affidavit deposed to by one Muhammad Usman, who claimed to be his younger brother, told the court that the NDLEA officers usually cleared the suspect and even escorted him from the airport to his destination. And that on that fateful day, the suspect, as usual, shipped drugs, cocaine from Ethiopia to Enugu airport. The officer of NDLEA cleared him within the airport, and then officers of FIB arrested the suspect with the help of information the affidavit reads. That before the informant accepted to work with the officers of FIB they both had an agreement to compensate the informant. Now, that officer of FIB having noticed that officers of NDLEA were the ones clearing the said suspect with his drugs, which is cocaine, and they immediately took the suspect to NDLEA and also reported those officers involved in the act. That instead of the NDLEA to undo the matter, that instead of the NDLEA, which is the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, to undo the matter accordingly and bring their officers involved to book, they decided to frustrate the informant, thereby refusing to compensate the informant. That it was at this junction that the attention of the DCP Abba Kyari was called, one because the NDLEA officer involved is his friend. Also decided to intervene for the purpose of compensating the informant. Now that the NDLEA officer who refused to compensate the informant was the one who framed the DCP Abba Kyari up on a trump-up allegation that he was trying to bribe him. Now, is it Abba Kyari that is explaining this, or they are explaining for him? Now, since he has been arrested or indicted also by the FBI, he should rather go by himself and clear the air. Yes, this is what it is. I don't want a missing word. Nobody should be a spokesperson to offer Abba Kyari. Abba Kyari definitely can defend himself. So he is an officer of the law, except he wants to tell us that he is just a thug wearing police uniform and couldn't defend himself, or rather, he does not really understand English. He cannot stand on his own. He cannot defend himself, and that is why I said yes. Abba Kyari should rather visit the NDLEA office, or rather the FBI office, and go and settle himself. Yes, he should defend himself because there are complaints and defendants. If you go to the court of law, yes, there are plaintiff rather, yes, and there are defendants. So if the plaintiff is accusing a defendant, and if defendant cannot defend himself, cannot even say his own side of the story, he admits, that means yes, he has admitted and does not even have a say and cannot defend himself. That means he is guilty of the charge. And now if Kyari insisted that there was no proof to support the allegation, then he should rather go and say it by himself. And in other words, that the Nigerian police force, based on the allegation of the respondent, arrested the applicant on the 12th day of February 2022 and handed over to the NDLEA. Kyari insisted that there was no proof to support the allegation upon which he was arrested and detained. That the applicant is a decent police officer who has distinguished himself in areas of serving his father's land as a police officer. The document reads. Now, that the applicant needs to be compensated and not to be dragged about, receiving torture, degrading and inhuman treatment by anybody or agency whatsoever. That there is no sufficient proof that the applicant has committed any offense to warrant this torture.